Good, really good news. We put out a bunch of press releases. We tried to get ahead of this story. But if you look at the schools with the largest number of voucher school students, some of them have some challenges. And so you're going to see a lot more focus on individual schools than you've ever seen before. And so I want you to be prepared for that. Now, that's some of the impacts. There's lots more impacts. Of course, there's tons more impact. Changing demographics, test score issues, those are two of the impacts that you have. What are the future challenges to private schools and non-public schools in Indiana and around the country? And I think this is, I hope, where we can have a lively dialogue at the end if you're not too tired or too bored. First thing that's happening, and the challenges, regulations have gone wild, right? And we need to be very cognizant of this as non-public school supporters. Let me give you a story. John will help magnify this story too. So was it middle session or something like that? Middle of this last session, John had been dealing with this for some time and saying, Robert, you got to deal with this. Robert, you got to deal with this. You got to help me deal with this. I'm dealing with this, but you got to help me, Robert. And then it so happened that my principal from Cardinal Ritter for my son's school said, Robert, you better sort this out, help sort this out. And so I get involved, and all of a sudden what had happened is there was a parent who lost custody of her child, it looks like, who was at a school, Catholic school up in the north. That child was then given custody to a parent in the Indianapolis area, and they went to Wayne Township. Well, that parent who was there, the parent who lived up north, had not paid their bills, had not contacted the school, had not worked with the school, had not returned phone calls to the school, and the school did what it should be free to do and must be free to do, i.e. uphold constitutional law related to contracts. Right? That's what they said. So they are not going to release transcripts. But lo and behold, the public school superintendent of that district wrote a letter that just caused a massive chaos among Republicans in the State House. He said, it's unfair that you ask us to take all this competition and then we can't have a level playing ground. We have to release transcripts. We're required by law to. I think it's only fair that non-public schools should be required to release their transcripts regardless of whether a parent pays or not. So all of a sudden, we have two Republicans supporting a bill to eliminate the ability of non-public schools to stop holding transcripts as a way to ensure payment, i.e. violating contract law. So John and I are sort of all of a sudden dealing with this. And I had to spend a considerable amount of time in chits talking with people and working with them, helping them understand what this issue was, and we finally worked it out. But that's a huge issue, right? I mean, that was just one. As non-public school coordinators and leaders, you need to be aware of this stuff, working with John, and making your voice heard on this. In Louisiana, I love the Louisiana bill. John White is an amazing guy, just like Tony Bennett. I mean, those guys, love them or hate them, boy, they really do care about what they do, and they really are trying to restore the system. John White passed this voucher program that does not allow private schools to have selective admissions. We were very happy to make sure that happened here in Indiana. That requires the private schools to accept as payment in full the amount of the voucher, and that it requires an audit, but audit done by the legislature. I think we've made a little bit of that. These are some of the questions, right, that we have to deal with. Now, if you just think it's those two, you can't read this, but you can see it in here. These are all the rules and regulations on the voucher programs around the country. How many kids can go, income limits. What are the geographic limits? What are the enrollment caps? What are the voucher caps? Do they have testing mandates? You see the kind of mandates that are on these things, right? Now, again, we've worked really hard to keep them as free as we can. And if any of you think, gosh, philosophically, well, that's because vouchers lead to more regulation and tax credit programs, they surely don't do that because somehow the tax code is harder to regulate than the education code. Well, just turn your page and see all the regulations on the tax credit programs. I mean, tax credit programs are just as easy to regulate as voucher programs. In fact, my guess is the tax code has now grown to something like this in terms of the number of books available for it. The point making here is one of the challenges facing non-public schools is the amount of regulations that you guys will be able to put up with, agree to put up with, or want to push back on. So as you guys look and working with John and working with your own archdiocese, developing a list of no-go regulations would be a great idea. Where's the line and no further? Because I can tell you right now, unless you do it, the legislature will do it for you. And they'll figure it out. Now, the other thing is one of the challenges of voucher programs, to get them passed, you had to do anything to get one passed. Gosh, in Rhode Island, we accepted $1 million tax credit program. Well, that's a useless program in some ways, right? Not enough money to get enough kids access, okay? But the reality is limited programs have limited impact on enrollment. And so what this means, so we did a study of how have all the voucher programs around the country impacted the following issues: sector size, sector consolidation, these are non-public schools, religious classifications, minority composition, school type, school level, and teacher-student ratio. I.e. school type, how many new private schools are there? Has it affected student-teacher ratios? Are there more school grades in private schools? Are the religious schools' classifications changing? Are the sectors getting smaller or bigger as a proportion of the total? Well, as you can see in Milwaukee, Florida, Arizona, Ohio, Cleveland, Pennsylvania, DC, and Minnesota, there's been virtually no impact of the existing programs. The reason for that is because they're very limited in their design. They only allow certain numbers of kids. Now, Indiana is going to change that, I think, and it's going to change it faster because it's a broader program. Only in Milwaukee, where you have had a program for 15 years, 18 years now, have you seen some impact on the sector. So again, thinking about your marketplace, thinking about your customers, thinking about the money and how Indiana is going, thinking about the regulation, this is one of the challenges you face. What's going to happen to your sector in the next 5 years? And then the last two things, which I hope we spend a lot of time on. John says, how did you frame it? You said it's a new cultural dynamic.
New educational culture.
New education. It's a brave new world out there, guys. I mean, in terms of school choice. Let me tell you what they perceive, what I hear every day. Private schools aren't very good. I hear that every day. You guys just really aren't very good. You really don't have accountability. You really have no way to prove your accountability to policymakers. So as a result, you're going to end up taking all the state tests, as you already do in some cases. That's going to happen even more because they don't think you're any good in many ways. This is a PR challenge. You have a huge challenge ahead of you. Policymakers generally do not think you do a good job on the whole. Individual schools, fine, but on the whole, they don't think the sector does very good. The second thing is you guys aren't ready for prime time. And what do I mean by that? So we talked a little bit about the sector, right? We talked a little bit about what your competition is doing, what your where your competitors are at. So are you ready for 60 new charter schools, 50 new charter schools in Indiana in the next 5 years? Are you ready for the growth of the students you're going to be having? If we double the program of the voucher program, if we triple the program, if there's a desire to have 15,000 kids in non-public schools, are you ready for that? Have you planned for that? Are you accountable enough? Do you have the data systems in place to handle it? Are you even aware how they look at a quality school? Because to them, to the legislatures and to the public, it's only about test scores. And just wait till the A to F grades come out. Right? So again, let's go back. If that's the case, what do you think is going to happen to the A to F scores? The same kind of mantra is going to be happening, right? So this is not meant to depress. This is meant to say there are some significant challenges and opportunities. With all challenges, so I know I shouldn't probably use a Milton Friedman quote, but Milton Friedman said, John, would you mind getting my bag real quick? I want to read it because it was, the quote, specific quote was totally abused and taken out of context by Naomi Klein. But I think it is worth reading. There is enormous inertia, he said, a tyranny of the status quo in private and especially government arrangements. Quote, only a crisis, actual or perceived, produces real change. When that crisis occurs, the actions that are being taken depend on the ideas that are laying around. That, I believe, is our basic function in society as economists, to develop alternatives to existing policies, to keep them alive and available until the politically impossible becomes the politically inevitable. Whether you perceive this or not, there is a bit of an opportunity here through the challenges that you face. If you have people saying private schools aren't ready for prime time, charter schools, for example, let's take a look at charter schools. Who knows how much support is out there for charter school teacher development, school development, capital building? Just look around. The Charter School Growth Fund, New Schools for New Ventures Fund, the New Schools Ventures Fund. I mean, there are capital funds being put together by entrepreneurs worth hundreds of millions of dollars to build charter schools. The Arnold Foundation, wonderful foundation, tremendous entrepreneurs out of Texas, going to drop $40 million into Louisiana, develop charter school leaders, develop new principals, have high quality schools. They're going to thankfully be part of the voucher program there too. You're talking a lot of support systems that are set up. The charter school sector in some ways is way ahead of the non-public school sector in dealing with issues like data collection, principal leadership and training, development of teachers through TFA. Teach for America, everyone heard of it? Any of those teachers come to your school? No. Why? Well, you're private schools, you don't need it. So some of the best teachers coming out are not going to your schools. Now, I know you all have great teachers, but I'm just saying there are a lot of support services being put up and being put in place to build charter schools out. Those same things do not exist in the non-public school sector. Now, the archdioceses around the countries, or around the states, are generally doing a great job, right? I understand what they're dealing with. But the fact is this sector is growing really fast, and it's going to grow faster. And the last thing I want is to have Governor Daniels say, well, we knew this program wasn't going to be very big anyway. We just liked that it stimulated improvement in public schools. That's not what we really want. What we want is every child to truly feel like they have an option. So, as you look about all these issues, there are a lot of challenges, a lot of perception issues. I can guarantee, last year in the legislature, when we had to fight off the regulations on the scholarship tax credit program, we heard this all over again. These non-public schools aren't accountable. They're not showing us their books. They don't take the same tests. They don't take the same kids. They're not high quality. And right now what's happening therefore is the data systems being developed by the state are the data systems that you're going to have to live with. But who here, raise your hand here if you think that a quality school is dependent on test scores only. Clearly it's not, right? So what is your story? What is your PR? What is your knowledge? What kind of data systems you're going to have in place? What kind of metrics do you think you guys can put together to show what a quality school is? To show your sector for the great sector that is. So I think those are some of the challenges that are facing you as you go forward. I think that's your marketplace. I think you have a lot of consumers willing to go, but you have a significant number of challenges ahead of you. Again, not to depress you, but to challenge you. Because I think as we look going forward, you guys are dealing day to day with children in most instances. And that's fantastic. But we also have to start thinking as a broad sector, how are we going to build and grow? Because we know that the non-public sector has been the best produced sector in the last 50 years. Consistently, the data is you guys are better. So what are we going to do and how are we going to do it? That's the challenge facing us. And I know that, thank goodness, John is here to help do that. And I know you guys are working on it every day. So my hope is we can have a little bit of a dialogue. That's my speech. It's probably too long, bored the heck out of you. But I would love to have a challenge to dialogue or any kind of conversation about it if it's not too tiring.